Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast who every 2 weeks come together to discuss an anime that we've recently watched and then turn our discussion over to you to tell us why our reviews are wrong, tell us what points we missed, or tell us why our reviews are right, in the rare occurrence that could happen.
My review specifically.
10 for 10.
Jeremy's got my back.
Tonight, to discuss the anime 86, I need the help of my co-host. Now, first off, we have the tank to my girl, Jeremy. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I tried out a new game. I'm sure other people have probably played it a ton, but it's called Void Bastards. And it is a roguelike where you're in first person and you're running around on all these spaceships and taking out like mutated people in order to get parts so that you can make your way back. And it's actually kind of a satire roguelike. I've found it very enjoyable. It's kind of creepy. It's got a really nice vibe. You guys are always talking about like Alien Isolation and stuff where you have to hide from enemies. And I'll tell you, if you don't hide in this game, you get wiped out. Not that it's as good as Isolation, but oh my gosh. Yeah, it's about as much of that hiding as I can handle.
Hold on, whoa. You played a roguelike? That's so weird.
I know, isn't it crazy? I just decided to randomly pick something in my game library and hit play, and it just happened to be a roguelike.
We also have the Shia LaBeouf to my Fury, Jason. How are you?
Fantastic. So season 2 dropped a while ago of Raised by Wolves. So I'm a couple episodes in. That show is a fever trip. Oh man. And man, they started off the season really well. It like a ton of stuff that you thought couldn't happen, like just kind of rolls in, and you're like, oh, this is what the other side looks like. This is how they're dealing with things. And it's just as terrible.
Yeah, exactly. There are no good guys.
Right. Oh, and giant flying monster wants to say hi. So yeah, that's been a blast. Besides that, just been fired up Minecraft again. Having fun with that. So
Fun.
you have fun.
I have so much fun. I have been watching the most scandalous of shows, the hit of the season. My wife asked me to watch Bridgerton with her. And
What?
What even is that?
Let's just say the audiences between that show and this show probably do not cross over very much. Bridgerton is a show about high society England back in the 18th century and the courtship season between the gentlemen and the ladies. And when I say scandalous, I mean like a gentleman and a young lady being in a room alone together for more than 5 minutes. Crazy.
Are you sure your wife asked you to watch this and that's not just a cover story?
To be honest, the first season, it's almost the exact same plot of Toradora. It's like, hey, we'll pretend we're courting so that no one will bother me, and you can get more people interested in your courting, but then they fall in love. Very, very classic trope. Like, let's pretend we're in love, and then they actually do. That's Toradora. So, there's a lot of listeners who like the romantic animes. They're not going to judge me, I hope. But guys, the sex scenes are very sensual.
I thought you said they were only 5 minute, like being in a room together. Is that what they're doing in the 5 minutes?
Well, that's kind of the point of the show, is that they're these adults who've never being alone for 5 minutes with someone of the opposite gender is scandalous, and then suddenly they're married and go on a honeymoon and have to do things, and it's it's the awakening of
I see.
sensuality, and it's very very sensual. And season 2 just started, and my wife is very excited. She's like read all the books and okay, so the reason I'm watching with her is when I watch Star Wars and I'm like, yeah, in the book, this guy is actually this, or this guy is from this, and now she's doing that to me with Bridgerton about young gentlemen and ladies.
I can just imagine the way this conversation went. It was like, hey, Troy, do you want to watch this? And you're like, no, I don't really. Well, how about we compromise? We'll watch it. All right.
I did thoroughly ask, is there any dragons? Is there a dragon going to show up at any point? A lot of British accents. There should be a dragon.
Yep. No luck.
Yeah, I thought
Well, I
that
guess
was.
it depends on your perspective of those scenes later. I mean, in Game of Thrones, it's don't wake the dragon, right?
I thought that would be a little something different to share with our audience.
Yeah.
I did like the fact that like the first season's like Toradora, and I really do like Toradora. I like that kind of romantic chemistry. Like, I don't like you, you don't like me. Let's pretend we like each other, and then they do. That's fun for me.
You say Toradora, and I hear Dora the Explorer, so
Yeah.
I have no idea what
Like
you're talking
just
about.
like one of the most popular romantic comedy.
I was just
animes
about to
ever.
say, you say Toradora as if we just like, oh yeah, we've seen that before.
Yeah,
Okay.
the host of an anime podcast knowing a popular anime. I'm sorry, my expectations were too high.
We're very niche, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. Next year, I'm picking Toradora for the annual review. All right, let's talk about the anime we're here to talk about, which is 86. This is just the first 11 episodes. The 12th episode is a recap episode, so we will actually end up skipping that and going into 13 in our next podcast. But for right now, all you need to know, episodes 1 through 11 will be spoiled eventually. But before we get to that, let's do our non-spoiler review of just this first half for the first season of 86. Jason, it was your pick after many controversial arguments in our last podcast, which did make the final cut.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us what you thought?
I thought this was a fantastic story. It's heartbreaking. It's thought-provoking. It's gritty. But at the same time, you fall in love with these characters, and the show's like, "Oh, you like this one? You like?"
Yeah, exactly.
Man, just a stake through the heart, left and right, and I loved every time. It just pulled me in. So I really found myself rooting for a lot of these underdogs, and I can't wait to see the next season.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremy, what do you think?
I was thinking the same thing. I'm right there with Jason. The way that they moved in combat was also awesome. I mean, I love mechs, and I also really like the Attack on Titan grapples where they pull themselves all over the place. And seeing those two things combined, and it wasn't like, Gundams or Armored Core or something, but it actually looked like it came out of World War II, was really cool. The characters were great. They really grew on me over time, which made it all the more palpable when they would disappear one by one. The music was really good. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this.
There was an anime movie years back about children warriors flying aerial dogfights for their nation's entertainment. It's like, hey, the nations need to be entertained by war, so we have these. It doesn't like there's literally no stakes, but we send up these kid pilots to go have aerial dogfights that we can show to our nation. It was called the Sky Crawlers. It just had it was very slow. It was a very slow movie, but really dark and deep tale. This had all that elements of that dark mythos and like the dark side of war and the dark side of the young soldiers who are dying for war, but also was a much more engaging story. It also did some really cool things with its storytelling narrative and for our timelines. It would show one timeline from one character's point of view, then jump to another character's point of view, and then show that timeline over again. Very difficult for taking notes and recapping, as we'll find out, but very intriguing for watching, because every time I'm watching something, I'm asking, okay, where does this fit in the timeline? And it makes me more engaged because I'm trying to almost put that puzzle together. The battles were great. The score was everything Tactop Destiny needed to be doing with their score. It was one of the best scores I've noticed in a while. Scores don't usually stand out to me. So then there was a couple of scenes where I was like, man, they're just nailing it with this melodramatic piano music as they march across the countryside or whatever they were doing, or the battles. So yeah, very enjoyable to me. Very, very recommended. Like I said, heavy topics and emotional, dark storytelling, but very good. All right, before we go to spoilers, what do you guys think of the intro and the, I guess we'll call it the outro?
It's funny, the intro's good. The visuals are decent, the music's decent. I didn't find myself attached to it. The outro, that song is just in my head. It lives rent free in my head, and it will for some time. That song is so good, and it's in. It's like 4 or 5 minutes before the end of the episode normally, so you can try and skip it and get the last couple minutes of the episode. I never did. I never wanted to because I just wanted to hear that song again. And also like most of the time the visual was just a still image, and it was different every time, but they just did something with it and it hit with the music. Like there was one time it was like this hand coming down from the episode and then it froze frame. And then when the beat hit, it like turned red and and I was just like, my heart went, ugh. And I'm like, why? Why did my heart go, ugh?
Art.
Right?
Stinking art.
So, yeah, I know I'm raving about an ED of a still image, but man, they did just a fantastic job with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the things I really liked about the OP was how the characters, as they would die, would start appearing in the OV at the very end. You'd see them walking off and then standing there and facing away from you because they've gone, and that's kind of a thing in this anime.
They also disappear from the scene where they're all facing the camera. So there's a scene where they're all facing the camera as a unit, and then as they were dying, they were disappearing from that scene and showing up in the other scene with their backs to the camera in a field.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah, I didn't
cool.
notice until the end when it was just the five the 5 characters left, and I was like, oh, they've been swapping. I got the
Yeah.
feel that they were appearing there, but I never got they were disappearing.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. But then I also missed episode 3, so
Well, you can't admit that out loud.
I'm gonna admit
Behind the
that out
scenes
loud.
secrets. You don't tell them when Jason doesn't finish an anime.
Self-flogging here.
Yes. Well, I think it'll excuse any of my faux pas where I'm like, well, but then this character did. Oh, they didn't. Okay.
Sure, you're never gonna let that go that I missed that last episode.
All right. With that, I think we can go on. Oh, I guess I should give my opinion. My opinions were the same as everybody else's. Look, if it seems like I'm phoning it in tonight, I am. Anyway, let's go on to the spoiler section.
Well, before we do, we are going to move on to the last season, so 12 through 22.
Yes, that is what's up next. We are finishing this episode. I think I already mentioned it a little bit, but this is the part where we're supposed to tell you what's next. And Jason, thank you. Yeah.
Just being very specific.
Through 24, right? 13 through 24. We're skipping.
Is it 24 or 22?
23, I believe.
23?
Well, here we go again.
Right? One of those.
Okay, so my anime list says...
I thought you guys had it up on Crunchyroll.
I just closed it.
I did too. 12 episodes in the last one, so 11 and 12 is 23.
Okay.
We're good.
11 and 12 is 23.
Right, but there's actually 12 episodes in this season. We're just skipping 12.
No, it says there's 11 when you go and look at... It doesn't count the 12 episode. Yeah.
All right. Then to the end of the anime.
We are professionals.
Yeah. Whatever the end is, that's where we're going.
Fair enough. All right, spoiler time. So if you have not seen 86, the first half, this is the part where we're going to tell you everything that happened as best as we could recollect, which, sometimes gets a little fuzzy. And
But you should go watch this before.
Yeah, totally.
But that's just my opinion.
Especially from a recap point of view, like I said, timelines are wonky in this.
Mhm.
There's so many times I started writing something like, "Oh, this is a flashback." No, this wasn't a flashback. This is actually forward. Oh no, now we're back. We've gone backwards again. The fireworks episode drove me insane.
But if
Yeah,
you
that
just
one was.
But if you just watch it and not taking notes,
Yes.
it flawlessly makes sense for some reason.
Yes, absolutely.
But I can see how it just be
It did jump
infuriating.
around. Yeah.
I did have that thought. Like this, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. They're not doing it badly. It's that I'm trying to take notes and I'm trying to understand context of a scene at the very moment a scene starts. No big deal. Not going to affect the rating, but will affect my recap.
Your sanity.
Yeah.
All right, so let's describe this world. Let's set it up. We are in similar to modern time, but there are like walking tanks. They're not really mechs. The good guys, or I guess what the 86 is, they kind of remind me of grasshoppers or ants, whereas the bigger one, the Legion, reminds me of like big spiders, but silvery. All right, so there's a lot going on in this world. We have what is called the Republic, a government, and every day the Republic tells their news about this war that's going on with the Empire Over, and the Empire Over is using AI drones. It's only AI drones that are fighting, and so the Republic is like, yeah, we're using AI drones as well. But also, we have on the outskirts of our territory the 86th district, where we keep people with hair color, because everyone else is albino.
Good catch.
If you have hair color, you live in the 86th district. But the full truth is that the drones they're using aren't drones. They're piloted by people from the 86th district.
Okay, so one point of clarification. The Empire Over, which I believe they called the Empire, right?
It was the Empire, yes.
They, like, the Republic won. Like, that Empire is defeated, technically, correct?
They defeated themselves. They built a AI army, and then the AI army turned around and killed them. And now there's just a AI army left.
And the news that they're giving to everyone is the AIs are on a timer because they're gonna like run out of battery life or whatever in the next 2 years.
Basically, it's
like neural connections are gonna fry. Basically, is what it sounds like. So, yeah, might as well be battery.
But yeah, 2-year timer is the bad guys are on a 2-year timer, so we're just sending our own robots out there to fight them. It's
zero casualties.
Yeah, it's actually
yeah
people. But also, the Republic does no longer qualify as 86 as people. They are considered, like in their books, they write they are an evolutionary of pigs. They are pigs.
Processors.
Which becomes a very big slur for everyone. Like the 86 call the Alba white pigs.
Yeah,
and
it just goes back and forth.
Pigs, everyone's a pig. We see a shot of a battle of these 86ers, and this is Spearhead Company, who will be our main group, and they're in a fight. We hear their commander on the radio. So these Republic military people, they basically log on to a computer and direct the battles from radio and just watching a computer screen, like as if they were drone pilots, right? Very similar to what we would use for a drone pilot. You're just in an office, you're in a computer, you do your work, and then you close it all down. But we hear their commander, and he starts screaming and going crazy. And then our story starts proper with our main character, who everyone calls Lena, but her name is Miliz? M-I-L-I-Z.
Name, yeah.
Major Milize.
But we can call her Lena because that is her nickname. And we start with her just getting ready for her day, and she's one of these Republic military members who direct units of 86. So what are your guys' thoughts on Lena?
I find her as of and I'm pretty sure this was the intention, she's a great stand-in for the audience. Someone that wants the story to go a particular way and you have no power to change it. And that's kind of how she is. And I love her backstory of she knows the truth about the 86 and she values them as fellow citizens, fellow human beings. And she feels power. No, she does everything in her power, which is very little, to affect change and to help people. Before she finds out the truth about why they're out there. And her nobility and her desire to, everyone calls her, the attempted saint. I like the philosophical conversations they have around that ideal in a society where you've got child soldiers. And, there's one great line that really hit me, where her friend goes, the difference is that we're in here with pudding and they're not.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's
Yep.
that's some elitist,
Yeah.
kind of truth bomb, just kind of exploding all over. And she's in this conundrum where she's safe inside these walls, even though she kind of doesn't want to be, but she does. And it's a great avatar for the audience, I've thought.
Mhm. Yeah, there were a couple of things that I thought were just kind of odd, but then I had to remind myself, well, this is an anime. An anime is going to make these creative decisions. And one of those was just the concept that even though the 86 have kind of been winnowed down to the point where they're all child soldiers, and that I can comprehend, that makes sense to me, sort of. Um, that didn't necessarily happen to the Alba. These people that live inside the walls don't have anything that's winnowing down their adults. So their adults are continuing to age as normal. I don't see a reason why they would elevate young people as young as she is, because she's the same age as these ones, like 17, 18, and put them in a position of command the way that they're doing with her. Again, anime. Like, of course.
They give a BS reason, but the answer is really just anime.
Yeah. So that kind of, it was there in the back of my head, bugging me a little bit. Also, when like her commanding officer, when she walked in and she got the assignment, and he was like, you don't have to take it, but all of these other handlers that have come before you, they've all either committed suicide or walked away from the job, or gone into some asylum or whatever. Just things have happened, bad things. So you don't have to take it if you don't want to. And she's like, no, I do. I want it. And he's like, do your best. Like, yeah, that's a military thing. That's what they say, is do your best. It kind of pulled me out of the immersion a little bit, because the military, this is such a military anime. I really expected more of everybody being military. And you get a fair amount of that with 86. But when it comes to the Alba side of it, it doesn't really feel as much like military.
I kind of have to disagree a little bit, because
Okay.
like right in the first episode, they show that the military is just a bunch of slack-jawed idiots that are spending their days drinking.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Because they don't have to fight, right? The drones are doing it for them, so they have all the time in the world. So
yeah, in BattleTech, there's one of the houses is like that, where they're all just nobility that has been appointed as generals because of their ranks, and so they make bad decisions. They get people killed all the time, and yeah, I can see that, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it would be something that would be so widespread. Like, I could totally see it among the younger ranks, or some of them, because we did see that some of them were doing that in the beginning. But this guy seemed pretty grounded, and he was a pretty high up commander. And I just expected a little bit more commanding presence from him than what I got.
The in-show explanation is that he is her, in quotations, uncle.
Mm-hmm.
He is the best friend of her father, who died early, and so basically she has been given like, hey, your dad was a great general, so you get to be here. And she did pass, like, you're the youngest to ever pass the exam and stuff. But it also felt like this is how I'm taking care of you for him. Then
Hmm.
what sticks in my craw is then why give her spearhead
Yes.
first point when
She's gonna go
that's
crazy.
So the reason was because in the first episode, she walks into a room full of students and starts spouting off the truth to them. And there's an MP that just leaves. And I have a feeling that MP went to go tell on her because I think this assignment was more about making her go crazy and getting rid of her because she was a loud voice than it was about giving her a really great opportunity. Because as we come to find out, this is a suicide quad. This is where they send those to get rid of the heroes so that there's no uprising. And I have a feeling she was causing too much trouble for her own good because we find out later that the uncle wants the normal to go on. He wants the status quo to continue, and she's rocking the boat. And so let's get her in a position where she can go nuts.
Well, I think you're probably right, but I do have to be technical, and you got those events reversed. She actually got assigned in episode 1, and she went into the school in episode 2.
Okay.
So it couldn't have been for that, but maybe there were other things.
Maybe she
where
was
she'd been
causing trouble
before.
beforehand.
Yeah, I think there's even a point later where because I wrote down, I took a couple notes for the first 2 episodes, and I remember that she went in and talked with the nurse, and the nurse was like, "Oh, you did that again." So she probably had done it before. She probably has got a name for doing that, and you're probably right. That's
I made this assumption, Jason, that this is the uncle's way of either teaching her a lesson or here's the real way of the world. You need to stop having your ideals. I think multiple times like your ideals are stupid. Quit having them. So that is what I assumed. But as far as like how she got to where she was, it did very much feel like because of who your father was and my relationship to him is the only reason you're given the leeway you've been given and the privilege you've been given.
I agree with that.
Yeah, which just kind of felt, I don't know, it felt gross. And I know that that's fine because that's what it's supposed to feel, but it just felt gross. Like that's just incompetence. So
yeah, but again, they were a terrible military. The question I kept asking is, why don't the 86 just turn around? We have the big guns, and she asked that, and they address it. But I'm like, seriously, you are the strongest part of the military. You could just take over everything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my thoughts on her is kind of an emotional character, kind of by the book, by the numbers, what she's supposed to be. I did really enjoy the idea that she brought up, and Jason, you kind of touched on this too, just of I don't see them as non-humans. I still haven't asked their names. I'm still sending them into battle. I'm not doing anything to stop that from happening. And ask the question. And it's something we look at in history, right? Like, hey, people say, hey, they everyone was owning slaves at this time. Well, yeah, but still, slavery was bad. Even back to ancient Egypt times. Hey, maybe owning humans should be a morally bad thing, no matter what's actually going on. And this has a character that's like, yeah, you're going with you're morally good compared to everyone else, but in the grand scheme of morality, is that good enough? And I like that there's a character, and then she's having to come to terms with that because she thinks of herself as pious and I am morally better than everyone around me, so I am the moral right. And then these this other group is like, are you though?
But isn't that what villains always say to bring down people who are trying to be better?
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it was like, yeah, it never said she had to do anything. And even they are like, hey, you're better than almost anybody else. You don't have to feel bad. But I enjoyed that they asked the question and had her have to think about it.
Yeah, I agree.
And then come to find out later, they're both kind of in this position where if they waste any time, the Legion's gonna just overrun everyone.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's amazing that how you come to find out just how close to the fall of this civilization is from the Legion.
Very good point, Jason. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, so Lena goes about her day. We see her getting upset at soldiers mocking the 86 and her, attachment to them or the way she treats them. We see her talking to Uncle Jerome, who's the general, and we also see her leading her unit and going through the motions of that. And then when she meets Jerome, she's giving her new assignment, which is Operation Spearhead, and she is warned every. What are they called? They're not commanders.
Handlers.
Operators.
Handlers and subtitles.
Handlers.
Mhm.
I was about to say someone sub, someone.
Yep.
handlers.
Handlers.
Every one of their handlers has quit or gone mad or committed suicide. They are considered dangerous to be in charge of. And he's like, so you don't have to do it. She's like, well, I want to do it. So she takes the job. And then we see her meet up with her best friend, who is a scientist for the Republic, whose name is Annette Penrose, who's always baking goods. And I love the discussion how they're always like, are the eggs real? Is the milk real?
Yeah.
Like, what ingredients are real? What? And it's kind of like, what is the Republic actually getting as far as foodstuffs that they can live their posh lives, and what's actually faked and pretended? But
Which
also,
which makes me think the Republic's in bigger trouble than it's being led on.
yes, that's.
And
I think that's exactly what that was for, is to give you
Yeah.
clues that things aren't as peachy as they look. And also, I love about Annette is that she has so many. She's from a rich family and has all these gentleman callers, and all she's ever doing is complaining about her gentleman callers, who some are like 10 years old and some are like 70. So
Yeah. And
All right,
her teammates make fun of her by putting their pictures on the walls. There's like this long line of all her suitors.
You guys have any thoughts on Annette?
I love the great drink dichotomy between these two. You've got one who feels righteous and that she needs to do the best she can for these people, and then you have this other one that basically was in her boat and has kind of just accepted what her reality is, and that it would be dangerous to veer off of this reality, not only for the country but also for her sanity, because of she feels she turned away a family in need when she was younger. And there's this great scene where she just starts revealing all this. We'll get to it, where she reveals all this information to Lena, and you can see it in her eyes. There's something going on up there that she's not okay with, and she getting a little bit of the crazy eyes. And trying to embrace the bad guyness, if you will, but come to find out she can't. She's having a really tough time living. Like, she is a complex guy. That's, I think, one of the best things about this anime. There are so many complex characters that have multiple layers.
Yeah, when in the pre-show when we were talking about favorite characters, I totally forgot about the depth of this character. This would probably be my favorite character depth-wise, just because, like Jason was saying, there is something really complex about the shame that she's experienced, the loss that she's experienced, the facade that she constantly wears, how she plays into this game where, she has suitors and she dresses up and goes to balls and she's trying to make the best out of a horrible situation. She's still trying to bake stuff and use real ingredients and make her friends happy. And all of it is just this facade to help get her through. And when she's confronted with a chance to actually maybe relieve some of that shame, do something good, at first it's like, no, I'm used to this. I've lived this all my life. This is my coping mechanism. Do not disturb. But it's absolutely fascinating watching what she does. She's a very cool character.
Yeah, along with the things that I already mentioned, the what I loved about her most is when you get the big reveal is you realize, because she says some stuff that's very prejudiced. She calls the 86 pigs, and she says stuff like, yeah, don't worry about the pigs. Puts on this very prejudiced front. But then you find out she's not actually prejudiced. She very much feels similar to Lena, but because of the shame of not doing anything about it, turns into presenting the prejudice so that she doesn't have to face that shame. Hey, if I just act like I actually hate these people or actually see them as subhuman, then I don't have to feel this guilt that I don't treat them like humans or I didn't treat them like humans when it mattered. That was fascinating.
Yeah. And it's funny because every time she goes, Lena, you need to stop doing this. Looking back now, you can kind of see the pain that Lena brings to her every time Lena complains about, oh, I want to help these people, or oh, I want to make sure that they live to the next mission. Penrose is just like, oh, you need to stop talking about this because you're making me face it.
Yeah, she's salting her wounds.
Yeah.
We then follow Lena through her story until she makes contact with her new unit. I think we see her work one more time with her old unit, has like a death, and then is like, I'm sorry someone died. Also, I'm leaving. And they're just like, yeah, whatever. Bye.
They do thank her for treating her nicely.
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool because it does show that, the 86 already, even that little short introduction that we have to them, they're noticing when somebody treats them better.
And then so we follow her up till she makes her first call. So, and we needed to explain this. There's a device that has been invented in the Republic where you basically put on a choke collar, and the 86 wear devices on their ears where you can share sensory information. Basically, she shares hearing with them so that they can talk to each other. You can share visual sensory, but that's an overload and will eventually blind you. And Annette, who is one of the lead scientists on this, like her father invented it, warns her, like, you be careful how much you're using that. Like, you use it too much already. Don't worry about calling them. Well, she calls them that night.
Yes.
And every night at the same time. From then on out.
But then the story jumps back, which it does often, and now we see the unit spearhead going about through their day. We see them cleaning their barracks and having a meal together. We see them go into battle, and one of their members die. And we see their commander, the Undertaker, who we'll talk about in a second, go up to this dying soldier and shoot him in the head. And
that's
not quite
right?
dead yet.
Yeah, not quite. That was Cujo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Something like that. I didn't get all the names of all the units. I just have the 4 that go the longest.
Yeah.
There's a few others I know, and that's about it. But yeah, so it's like, okay, what's that about? And everyone's like, hey, Undertaker will take care of us when it's time, is what they all say. Thank God we're here. Undertaker's here. He will take us with him, and he will take care of us. And this is what we see how he does that. And then that night, when they've all returned to the barracks, they get the call from Lena. And so that's a lot of how this story goes, is we'll follow one character up to a certain point, jump back, see the other characters, see the spearhead unit go through that same time, right up to the point where they talk to each other. The call is a lot of time where the two storylines converge a lot. So now it's time to talk about the spearhead unit. We'll start with our main character, whose name is Shin, who goes by he's the leader of this unit. Your guys' thoughts on Shin?
Talk about a complex, layered character. Oh man. His backstory is brutal. He's got mixed feelings because I don't know if we should get into the Legion and how they run yet. But he's got to go help his brother.
Yeah, there you go.
And he's running this unit, but he's also making sure that the Legion doesn't take his soldiers, which is one of the reasons why he executes a dying soldier, and why the dying soldier willingly takes it. Like, thank you so much for making sure that I die here. And I think what's really interesting is once he completes his mission, he's almost lost a will to live at that point. And I found that sad, but also like really, really fascinating, because it was like you come to this line of one of the other characters go, "This is what freedom's like," and they kind of come to this realization that, well, where we were was bad, but we got supplies and food and guns. With freedom, we got the fish we can catch.
He needed to play more Minecraft.
Right. You punch the tree to get the wood. You get the wood to make the axe. But yeah, I found this character absolutely fascinating. And I think I mentioned this already, but this anime, their character building is just on point.
Yeah, there were these really interesting tells where like you see him and he's always got this book, but you don't understand why he's got this book. And then later you realize, oh, okay, he's got the book as a distraction because of this other issue that's going on and his brother. And then the way that he reacts even during the moment where he's going to encounter his brother is like such a massive shift in his behavior. This is not the character we've known this whole anime. This is a completely different character for this part of this one episode. And it was really, really cool to see this. Once again, you have a character who is basically just they're living in two modes. They're very distinctly different modes. One is a coping mode, and the other is who they really are. And that is really cool to see in an anime when it's so distinct and so consistent, and it's not unbelievable, but it really makes sense given the circumstances. I especially liked how he would scoff, and he was not unfriendly, but he was reserved enough to where he didn't seek out human contact. He didn't seek out conversations, but he never pushed them away. And
like the cat.
Yeah, yes, he's like a cat.
No, he treated people like he treated the cat. He didn't particularly engage with the cat, but if the cat came up, the cat always came up and rubbed against him.
Yeah,
and he would pat it on the head every once in a while. But he
was
the
let the cat sleep on him.
Yeah,
he was support for the cat, and so the cat liked him best, even though he didn't care about the cat.
Yeah, he didn't seek out the cat.
Yeah, that makes more sense than being like a cat, which is what I thought you said.
He's so curious, like a cat.
He is. No, so yeah, I really liked that. He was a really good character.
Actually,
was? Whoops. Did I say was?
I did find that hilarious when she goes, "What's the cat's name?" and she gets like 40 different names.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
Yeah.
Not to bring up the cat too much, but that's absolutely the best way to make a cat love you. You ignore it and you only pet it, when you feel like it. If you treat a cat like a cat treats a human, cats will just love you. They just like, why don't you love me more? Maybe I don't want to.
You try and treat them like a dog, and they'll scratch you.
Yeah, no, you can't treat them like a dog. You gotta almost always ignore them, and they will adore you. Anyway, I really appreciated that about Shin, that I have that in common with him. Just a character that's so burdened. What is it? 516 deaths by the time, like this point in the story, because he carves the name. He takes out a chip of your armor from your mech. Do they have a name? The mechs?
Yeah,
they call them tanks.
The Goliaths, I think, or Juggernauts.
Juggernauts. They do call them Juggernauts. He'll take a chunk out of your Juggernaut and he'll carve your name in it, and then he puts that in a box. And there's 516 names in this box. That's how many people he's served with that have died that he's had to carry their name on. And just the burden of that. But also how he'll call up Lena and ask her if she's okay. Hey, I was worried about you. And that boggles her mind. Like, you're worried about me because I'm going to a party and you're on suicide missions every day. This is bonkers.
Social anxiety. It's a real thing, man.
His emotional breakdown, and then I didn't really see it as a lack of will to live, or just a lack of a direction. He was
no purpose left.
He was leaf on the wind. He lived for a purpose. He got that purpose, and now everything else is just kind of icing on his cake, and he's just taking it one day at a time and whatevs.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seemed like he was seeking out danger when it didn't seem they had to.
Definitely,
they were on
there was
recon.
Yeah, there was that moment where he was looking down into that viaduct or underneath the bridge. It was all dark.
Oh, that
He's
tunnel.
got a rifle. Yeah, in the tunnel. He's like, don't go there. Don't go there, man. Why do you
He
keep
did go
going
there.
back? Huh?
He did go there. That was to get to the zoo.
No, they were passing by it. I don't believe they ever went down that tunnel.
No,
They
don't
thought
you
that
remember?
he might
they
go
were-
to that tunnel.
Yeah, him and his buddy were standing in the entrance of it, and Shin starts walking towards it like, I'm gonna break off from everybody and go down here because I think there's danger. Or at least that seemed that way.
That is not what happened, but I will tell you guys what happened when we get there.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, they get Lena calling, and so they all meet their new commander,
Handler.
handler.
Yep.
Same thing.
Commander Dandler.
So she starts calling them on a regular basis. They are mostly ignored by that. We also meet the old man Aldrich, who is their mechanic, who always is upset about how they're damaging their juggernauts.
What a tragic character. Good lord.
Yep.
Yeah.
When we get his reveal, I was like, ah, dang.
Another
Just
one.
the old man.
Yep.
But actually, he's got that old man get off my front lawn attitude, and I
Yeah.
love it.
Yep.
We see like a bunch of the characters like they go to a nearby village and do some shopping, and then they're instantly called back. And then we see Lena coming to her station and starting up for a battle. And she's like, "Guys, there's Legion coming. You need to get ready." And they're like, "No, we're already out. We've already deployed. We're ready to go." And she's like, "How did you know they were coming?" They're like, "Don't worry about it. We're gonna fight."
And then they chastise her for using a particular type of communication because it can
Yeah,
reveal their
she-
location.
Yeah, she sends
Mhm.
electronic data to them, and they're like, "Hey, no, audio only. You're giving away our locations." Because they were so well prepared for them, though, they do defeat them, and they fight. In the Legion, there's like a bigger tank, but this is the first time we really get to see the combat of this. So I do want to talk about the Juggernauts. Jeremy, you had some thoughts about when you saw it, so why don't you go ahead and share those first?
Oh, I did not expect this. When I read the description from like my anime list, and I really didn't spoil myself beyond that. So I was expecting, clunky, meandering tanks or something. These things take off. They're like you said, grasshoppers, but I even thought of the juggernauts as spiders because they're just like, I don't know, they're moving like jumping spiders or wolf spiders or something. They're just taking off across the ground. And especially Shin, because he apparently has like all of his controls turned up to the highest maximum sensitivity, and so he's just shooting his grapples and jumping here and jumping there, and it is really cool to see this. It reminded me a lot of Attack on Titan. It's almost like Spiderweb, Spider-Man shooting his webs and jerking himself around, landing literally like he would jerking himself. Yeah, you got
Phrasing.
it. He would. I loved it when he would jump right on top of the enemy spider mechs and then point his gun right down and boom, destroy him. Very
And
good.
he's got
choreography.
blades that come
He's
out.
got blades. He's like cut him. So this was really weird to me. Okay, this is one criticism I have about the mechs. He is able to use his knife to cut a chunk out of the carapace of this juggernaut mech that he's got, right? Which he puts their name on and everything, and so his knife is a stronger steel than the actual protective casing. At one point, they even call it aluminum, but I don't know if that's just disparaging the grade of steel or if it really is aluminum. But he's got blades that can cut through these other Legion spider mechs like nothing. I mean, he cut 3 legs in one swipe. Like we're talking vibroblade technology here or something. And so clearly that level of technology exists to improve these juggernauts. They should be able to like pump out that kind of metal for the carapace, right? Black box the whole thing. And they don't. So that kind of was annoying to me.
That would be very defeatist for them. That would be the opposite of their goal.
of getting
The
them
Republic.
killed as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But they're not technically trying to get like, okay, if these
you're
juggernauts
right.
for this group are the only ones that are this bad, I could totally see that point. But these seem to be just standard fare juggernauts.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
I
So
think they're just okay with it. It reminds me of Star Wars and the TIE fighter, and like, yeah, we know X-wings exist. We know there's shields and 4 guns, but you know what? These are cheaper, and
we have a lot of soldiers.
We have a lot more.
I guess they really buy into their 2-year time span. I mean, that seems like the only real explanation.
That was 5.
No, 2 years for the Legion to die.
Yeah. For the Legion.
Yeah.
In other words, in 2 years, we don't need to be fighting anymore, so we only need to keep this war going for 2 years.
So we don't need to make these better.
And if we're going to infer upon with like the eggs and the milk and cheese, if the Republic's in a dire strait, they might not have the resources to make them better.
That's true. That's very possible.
Maybe little A, little B.
Yeah. Well, another weird thing is that I guess I shouldn't mention it until we talk about the Legion, but I saw a horse out there in the wilderness, so it made me wonder.
Oh, I did too.
Yeah. Anyways, mechs. Awesome.
Yep. I mentioned to you guys in a pre-show that what I loved about them was how World War II plain they are. Of like, we built a machine that can fly and shoot guns, and then we just stuck a human in the machine. Like, it wasn't built for a man to be in there, but we figured out you could sit in there technically and technically have control over it. Because they mention all the time, like, there's holes, there were weak spots in the armor, water will go in if we put it in the river. These are not made for like human comfort. It's a basic machine to do a purpose, and because they also always talk about, it's hot, it's cold, there's no temperature controls, they just have to suffer with it. That gave me World War II airplane vibes, which I always find very appealing.
But you look at the Legion, and they look like something straight out of the Empire from Star Wars, like droid
shiny
army style. Yeah, shiny, strong. Like, and there's some of them they shoot with their tank rounds, which these juggernauts have this enormous cannon.
Yeah,
bigger than the juggernaut, and the magazine in the back is like even bigger. I love it.
Yeah.
But they'll hit some of these Legion. It doesn't penetrate their armor, so they have to go up and like cut it with their blades in order to expose it.
All right.
Combat's rad.
Yeah.
After this battle is the scene where Lena goes to the classroom as a speaker. And this is where we hear about, hey, this is all going to be over in 2 years. And then she tells the class like the truth, like, hey, we've been telling you it's drones. It's not drones. You guys are going to need to know that, because you're going to have to talk to these people.
She didn't look like she was invited, by the way.
No.
It did introduce her as a speaker, though. So I was kind of confused if she was or not.
It seemed like he was surprised that there was a speaker.
Yeah.
That's the impression I got.
Yeah, that was the impression I got.
Lena's calling them nightly. We see her just.
Well, it should also be mentioned that like when the class was informed of this, they didn't really care. It didn't change their perspective at all. There were some students that outright said, "Who cares if there's 86ers in there? Those are just pigs. They're not humans."
Yeah, and they call her out. And this is the first time she mentions like, "I met one on a battlefield." Because they were like, "How would you know? How would you even know? You've never been to the front line." She's like, "Actually, I did go to the front line once, and I met one of the 86, and they are very human."
Yeah, I think that's where it cuts away from that scene too.
She also scolds Shin for sending duplicate battle reports. She notices they're all just, and she's like, "No, I want real battle reports." And he's like, "Well, why? Who cares? No one cares." Yeah. She's like, "Nope." And he's like, "Oh, I can't read or write." And then someone's like, "You're reading a book every night."
One criticism I have is I was hoping it would go in the direction of Lena, through her experience watching them, but then also having, because they point out that she gives them topographical information they find extremely useful multiple times, that she would become more and more a better commander, and that her information would have been better and better and better. And they didn't go down that road, which I didn't like, but
Yeah, it seemed very much like she was the observer more than she was contributing anything. I
Yeah.
initially thought this was going to be like Ender's Game vibes, where she's the controller sitting back at a station and telling all these commanders what to do and playing them like a game, and it did not go that way at all. Although I wonder if that's what season or part 2 will be more of. Is like, what have you learned from this, and how will you use it?
All right. And the next episode, we get a very funny scene with boys spying on girls bathing in the river and getting busted.
Yeah, I missed this one.
Yeah, it was pretty
Darn
good.
it.
I like how it was a little less trope. Like they took a trope and kind of spun it on their head, because as soon as the boy like falls out of the bushes, instead of them being all like embarrassed, like, oh, he's looking at, no, they all pull pistols on him.
And Jeremy, just to clarify, they're like in rolled up pants and
Yeah.
their sleeves rolled up. There's much less bathing than the other bathing scenes in this
Yeah.
actual scene.
Right?
Yeah, no, I watched it during our pre-show. I had it playing. It's like, what is going on here? But what I was really looking for is, it always cracks me up when the guys have to deal with that situation where like they're exposed, like their horrible decision is exposed, and now they have to face the comeuppance.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was great when I did get to see that.
So in their call, that she starts having like talks with them. She learns about the cat. She learns about their dog Fido, which is actually a mech that helps them with supplies, who is endeared to Shin. And we also get to start meeting a lot of the characters. And at this point, it's hard to know which of these characters are going to be important. But we have Raiden, who's the second in command. Anju, who's the long-haired girl who has a guy who's desperately in love with her. Karina, who has a girl crush on Shin, but they note that she's very underdeveloped socially, like she's acts like a younger child. And then Theo, who is there like an artist, but he also had served under a member of the race from the Republic who had volunteered to join the 86 military. Those are kind of the four main characters. Are there any other characters you want to talk about? But is there any you want to call out, or just in general the characters of Spearhead that you guys want to share thoughts on?
There was Gunmetal Storm. So when it showed her getting the documents, Lena getting the documents for like all of their names, their call signs, I had to pause it, and I went through and I read the call signs, and I was like, okay, so I wonder who's gonna be who. And then I saw Gunmetal Storm, and I was like, that is such like a teenage Jeremy username. Like that is exactly the kind of thing I would have chose. So I kept looking for that character, and I have no idea which person that was. But by the end, they were completely unimportant. Probably killed very quickly, just like all of my online gaming experiences. But but other than that, I got a kick out of Kyrie, the first one to go that we actually knew. I think she's the first one I realized.
It's actually in this episode she dies. Yeah, it's Kaie. It's Kaie. It's Kaie.
Kaie. Okay, that one. Because she's such a like in the scenes that I saw her in, she's the one that called out Shin when Shin was like, I don't know how to read or write. She's like, Marin, oh, whoops, don't hate me, don't hate me. So she was really playful and really cute and funny, and I enjoyed that. So I was really sad when she was the first one to die. I was like, couldn't you have picked, some other characters? Kill the ones that we really don't know. But yeah.
She also so in this call, she has that big scene of like, look, it's not that we hate you, we just hate all of you.
Yeah.
You hated us for so long.
Yep.
She talks about how like, hey, it's not like all the 86s are good. There's people who didn't like me because the color of my skin. She's Japanese, but she comes up with the big thing like, I don't want to die, which is also the name of the episode, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's you might as well just put on a red shirt and walk out onto the battlefield.
Yep.
Yeah. So. And that is what happens. So after this call, and she has this big like, look, we appreciate what you're doing, but we're never gonna like you. You're never gonna be one of us. You're not gonna be able to handle this. You need to stop. She dies on the battlefield, and so we have Lena, who's trying to apologize, and she's telling everyone like, I'm sorry that I failed and one of you died. And Theo, I watched it in sub, so I couldn't recognize a voice for a voice, and a lot of voices are just overcome when they're talking to her. So a lot of times, if it wasn't Shin, who has a very like deeper and very monotone voice, I didn't know who was talking to Lena all the time. But we find out this is Theo, and he just like rails on her, pointed out some of the stuff I kind of said that they discussed with Lena's character is that like you've never even asked our names. We are call signs to you. We are soldiers to die for you. We are the pawns on your chessboard. Yeah, you call us every night like we're your friends, but we're no different than drones to you. Which he does feel bad about afterwards.
But he didn't say anything untrue.
Right.
Oh man, so is this the episode where the humanoid drones start rushing at the
Oh god.
Those things are the creepiest drones I think
Yeah,
I've
they are.
ever seen in an anime.
Those
And
are
the
awesome.
way they animate them running. So that's one thing I do want to praise the anime about. The CGI is vastly different than the animation, but the melding of the two was phenomenal. Like it didn't feel janky, and they did a really, really good job with the two.
It lent an eerie quality to it.
Yeah.
Which was really, really
God, but they had like these so small spindly arms that would just kind of wave behind them as they ran. It was like, oh,
yeah. Yep. I guess we could also mention Black Dog because he was one of the few characters that actually got some development, since he's the one that liked Snow Witch. Right?
Oh, you know them by their call signs. His name
That's it.
is
I'm a white pig, I guess.
Daya. Daya. His name is Daya. Daiya.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this isn't the episode he dies. That's not here.
No.
But yeah, he also got the drones, the creepy I call them kamikaze drones, just because of how they ran and blow up on you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, after berating her, like the rest of the unit's trying to console Theo, and he's feeling bad about it, and especially like I said, he knew I always forget the name of the race.
Alba.
Alba.
Just think of Jessica Alba, and you got it.
I haven't thought about her since yesterday.
Right?
because too much Rosario Dawson lives in your brain.
You're dang right it does. Right? Anyway, Theo had a commander who was an Alba who volunteered. So like he holds especially that commander in high respect. And so now he's like, what would my commander have said if he was still here after I said that to someone who's nice to us, who's trying, right? And Shin's like, I know you regret how you said it, but it's not like anything you said was wrong. You told your truth. But Lena still calls that night, and then we jump back to Lena's storyline and watch her go through the repercussions of these events. We see her like having a flashback about going to the battlefield with her father. She visits the general, the one that's like an uncle to her. He talks about her father, and he says, "People who seek impossible ideals, that's a cowardly thing to do. Like, because you're just wasting your time anyway." That's his, and he points out like the republic that we stand for doesn't really exist. So quit trying to fight for those ideals.
I hate his reasoning. His reasoning is so wrong. Like the whole point of an ideal is something to strive for, whether it's considered impossible or not. Especially when it's like their national ideal that they should be striving for. Oh my god! They did such a good job making a villain here. Like, not technically necessarily an anime villain that she would ever fight against, but like the propaganda spewing mindset of a villain that I'm just like,
He is obviously more politician than he is general at this point.
Yeah. Oh. Ugh. Ugh. Grinds my gears, man.
Anyway, she calls Shin again that night and not only apologizes but asks for their names. He tells them all the names, but then she calls everyone again, apologizes and asks for names individually. Gets all their names. And this is where she learns that Shin has 561 dead names in his box. And eventually, after talking with everyone, and them basically being like, "We forgive you. We appreciate that you're trying. We still think you're an idiot. You'll still never be one of us. But you do you." She calls Shin back later and says, "I forgot to ask you your name." And he tells her, and she's like, "Wait, do you know Ray? Same last name as you?" It's Nozen. I think it's Nozen.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Sounds right.
And he's like, "What?" And then we get in the next episode her flashback of the helicopter her and her father were on crashing, and everyone's dead, and this 86 guy saving her, and he has red hair, and it's Shin's. We find out it's Shin's brother, and he talks about how much he's trying to get back to his brother, and that's why he's got to fight, and he considers himself a member of the Republic, so he's going to defend the Republic and protect this girl, even if she is part of the class that has forced him to be in the army, and so he rescues her, and Shin very very mysterious here. He's like, "Yeah, my brother died," and she's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Yeah, and I gotta save my brother. You mean, or I gotta find my brother? You mean his body?" No.
No.
We should also mention, just as a side note, that both Shin and his brother are from the nation that built the Legion.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, their parents were born there, but then they became citizens of this nation.
And then they had lived in they call it District 1, so I'm kind of assuming it's the higher class district too. So they had been pretty well off until the whole, "Hey, you 86 are moving."
We come to find out they live literally next door to Penrose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a lot of talking. So we see them calling each other back and forth. He's telling like Lena, like, "Hey, you should go to your party. You need to quit all the time being like us. You need to have some life too." But then he's like, "Oh nope, the Legion are coming," and again, very instant mind. So and this time he tells her like, "Don't link up this time. Just don't do it. You won't be able to handle it." And she does, and she hears the voices of the dead, specifically Kaie, who had recently died. She can hear her voice.
Over and over. "I don't want to die. I don't want to die."
And this is the thing that has been driving the commanders mad. And then we see Spearhead rush into battle, and they are literally specifically looking for Kaie's voice in the Legion to destroy it because it's offensive to them, of course.
But this is where we come to find out that because they didn't get to her like they did in the first episode, they took her, and that's why they can hear her.
Right. So she eventually, after having like some hallucinations, she eventually calls Shin and gets an explanation. He reveals, "I can hear the voices of the Legion, and the Legion have been taking brains and using it to enhance themselves and get past that 2-year limit." Because that 2-year limit was like, hey, the AI was based on human brains, and so it was shut down after 2 years. Well, they've been upping that by taking the brains of 86, and especially if they find a full brain, it creates, because he calls them black sheep, so that's a Legion that has some brain in it. But then there's shepherds, which are a full brain, which are now acting as commanders on the battlefield. So their tactics are getting more advanced as well.
I guess in a way you could consider that the regular Legion are like NPCs, and then when you start getting black sheep, you get like newbie PvP, and then when you run into shepherds, you have like full-fledged veteran PvP players.
And Shin explains it as, because I once died, I'm able to hear their voices, is his theory here. But we find out later there's more to it than that. But that is his thing. So if you are linked up to him, you can hear the voices. So his teammates, when they're in battle, they can hear it. But he hears it all the time, no matter what he does. And they talk about this a couple of times. Like, it's draining. It must be. He's like, "No, I'm fine. I'm used to it." And they're like, "You hear the voices of the dead literally all the time, as long as the Legion are within a certain range."
Yeah.
But it lets him know when the Legion are approaching. And he knows like areas. He's like, "Hey, if you go to the east, there's no voices over there for some reason. So look to the east for help. He says that later. And then after saying goodnight, we see him go into the bathroom, and he takes off the scarf he always wears, the cool scarf. And there's a huge scar on his neck, and he tells his brother, I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah. Cool scarf hides a cool scar.
Cool scarf, bro. And we see in the next episode a flashback of him searching through ruins, and he finds his brother's juggernaut, and his brother's head is gone. So that kind of is the final piece that we've been missing is, hey, I'm looking for my brother's, the Legion that's my brother, to put an end. But also the scar came from his brother. His brother at one point had a mental breakdown and snapped and strangled him to death, and they were able to revive him. So it's not just I want to save my brother. It's kind of like I want to save / revenge my brother.
He's got a bit of like passion in his eyes when he finally does meet him.
He gets that creepy smile. Oh,
yes.
man.
Yep.
But yeah, in the flashback, like when the brother comes to, they look down and here's another guy who had broke him up, and he's doing CPR on Shin as a boy. And they were able to bring him back, but yeah, he snuffed him out.
Fun story. It was a priest.
Saved his life, yeah.
I only know that because he said that me and my brother were taken care of by an Alba priest. That's why we don't hate.
Yep.
All right. The next battle, the Legion have started to adapt to their tactics because they're always pre-ready for them and are hiding in advance. Now the Legion are bombing hiding places early. So this kind of flushes them out. And one of them, one of the girls gets hit, and Daya tries to go and save her, and then he gets hit by the kamikaze drones. And at the end of the battle, Shin has to go and kill him. The girl ends up taking her own life with a gun, so they can't get her brain. And
this is where just like Anju, the Snow Witch, just man, you feel for her, the purple-haired one, because she was in a relationship with Black Dog.
Yeah, because and we haven't really touched on this because he was going to die here, but he has been featured pretty prominently. He's always like watching her from afar, always offering her compliments, and she always like blows him off for fun. You can tell like she totally is aware and she's totally into it. But then he's like, hey, can I help? Yeah, you carry the whole tray. like just enjoying it. But yeah, now suddenly he's gone, and so she's lost that connection, and how hard that is for her. Lena, she on her birthday, she eats with Annette again, and then she goes to the general. She's like, hey, what about the mortars? We could use the mortars to help the 86. And he's like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. We don't even know if those work anymore. We haven't used them in forever. And he's like, hey, but good news, I have a new mission for you guys. And she starts pointing out, like, we're not replacing the unit. Like, I've had people die and requested reinforcements, and that's not happening. He's like, yeah, new mission. There's a Legion base nearby. We want you to go check it out. And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, just do it. So she tells Shin, and Shin's like, yeah, that's going to be a Legion trap because they know we're going to come check out the base, and they're probably trying to get rid of us. And she's like, well, then we shouldn't do it. He's like, nah, it's fine. We'll just do it.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yep, we can handle it. It's time for a raid.
And then she has a long talk with him that night just about his brother, sharing info about him. And we've seen her starting to get flushed when certain conversation topics come up. She sees a couple kissing while she's talking to him, and then like as I'm seeing their mouths moving is imagine it's her and Shin's mouth, and so she's starting to become very fond of Shin. And in this scene, when she's in her bedroom talking to him, she's like, hey, I've also really started to care for you like your brother. And she's like, nope, I gotta go, bye.
I did like that Shin asked specifically, like, hey, when my brother talked about me, what was his expression?
Yeah.
And it seemed to give him a little bit of peace in that moment. Like, oh, my brother didn't hate me. but I still need to go make sure he's not part of the Legion.
Yeah.
And
Anymore.
then we come to the firework episode. Look, guys, what you need to know is that at one point Lena sends fireworks to Spearhead. At some point, Spearhead uses the fireworks, and it's also they make it part of their mourning process because they did attack the base, and it was a trap.
They
And it
lost
was
a lot.
and because the enemy was testing a brand new long range artillery weapon that they've developed.
And they have these flyers, these like tiny robot flyers, thousands of them in the sky that disrupt communication. So they had no idea the artillery was even coming, which is why it took a lot of them by surprise.
The fireworks scene is very pretty though, especially since they've never seen fireworks. But I do like how Shin's like we could finally give them a gun salute to the fallen soldiers with these. But yeah, the narratively, especially note wise, it bounces around because it starts with the fireworks going off, then we see Lena sending them, then we see Spearhead receiving them, and then we see them going to battle, and then coming back and doing the fireworks.
Like, can you see the fireworks off in the distance?
After the ambush, they decide to tell her the whole truth, which is the full truth is the Spearhead unit has a special function. Members of 86 who serve a certain amount of years in the military are allowed to be done and return to society. So whenever that's getting close, they move those soldiers into Spearhead unit and then give Spearhead unit suicidal missions until everyone's dead.
Now, I thought they did a good job of leading up to this because you never see somebody with colored hair in the city.
Yeah,
so
I kept waiting for her to notice that. I was like, she's got to notice that this is not working. That, hey, you'll be joining us soon, and has never once seen an 86 walking around.
Yep, because they keep saying that all through leading up to this. They're like, yeah, they just have to make it through and retire. I don't think so.
And man, it kind of dawned on me when they were like, yeah, we're not getting replacements. Oh, they drained the entire unit before getting a new Spearhead. So basically, if you're too good at your job, guess where you're going.
We've also skipped over some of the great background visuals this uses for motifs and themes. There's the statue of an 86er on a bench with his neck broken and a sign around him that says pig, but a painting of the saint of the Republic coming down on him on the wall, like her foot's on top of him. But it always shows that at the angle, so that foot is right above him. And then also the chalkboard with the very first guy who died had been writing down how many days he had left, and now it just hasn't changed, but they keep showing it over and over again. 127 days left, 127 days left, because he died. That's where it reminded me of Skycrawlers. Like, it constantly doesn't let you forget what's the hard reality of this situation. And the visuals are very nicely done.
It kept coming back to the mannequin you were pointing out, and his head was gradually more and more bent, and the neck was more and more severed until the final episode.
And it's gone.
Yep. There's also me wondering who did that to it. Like, who was beating the crap out of that thing?
There's also some foreshadowing when Shin is looking in the mirror at his scar and talking to his brother, but there's also a crack in the mirror right across his neck to show that it's not always going to be there.
Yep.
Yes, well done with the visual foreshadowing, anime. We don't see a lot of detail like that. I appreciated it. I guess now that we know the full truth about the Legion, I guess we should stop and talk about what your guys' thoughts on this as our villain, especially since we see Shin's brother take out a battlefield on his own because he's in a super tank.
Yeah, it ends up being very Terminator kind of dichotomy here, where you've got robot army with AI that wants to exterminate humans, and come to find out it's because they're gonna get close to the princess, which is probably a Legion.
Dead princess.
Right. But it's kind of terrifying to think, oh, we're going to take your fallen soldiers and make them into our commanders, and unwillingly. There's just something real creepy and gross about it. It almost turns it into a zombie
Yeah,
show.
necromancers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found that just fascinating because they finally revealed to Major Millsy that, hey, the Legion's not getting smaller. Like, we're not making headway here. They're getting bigger. And as soon as all of us non-Alba are gone, they're going to overrun you. And he even mentions that in the last episode, like, hey, live as long as possible.
Yeah, survive as long as you can.
Yeah, you're gonna lose. And she points out, like, hey, no, there's less units. She's like, no, they're showing you less units.
Right.
Yep.
They've been conserving and holding back. Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah, the idea of this, like,
Mhm.
endless army of self-replicating robots is just, yeah, it's terrifying.
It really is. I absolutely love it. And I love the concept that the whole thing is based on echoes. Like, none of them are robots that have a fully functioning conscious brain that's making decisions. Everything is just simply what were the strongest emotional thoughts that you had at the time. And I say emotional because that's what it seems to be. It's like whatever your strongest emotion was and the hormones that flushed your brain at the time and opened certain synaptic pathways, right? That's what it keeps open. And that's
Hey,
what
an
it
emotional
keeps-
power level you're okay with.
Yeah, it is. It is. You got to cut their heads off, put them in robots, and I'm good with it. Um, so I absolutely love that because that concept, like you said, it adds like they're necromantic spider robots mixed with psionic echoes of fallen heroes, right? It's such a cool mixture. But it makes me wonder the whole reason why they're harvesting heads because initially they were AI, right? And yet you pointed out we get a sort of last minute introduction of a very important shepherd, it seems like, probably the one in charge of the mortar that they're using, that's saying, oh, protect the princess, protect the princess. How long has that guy's brain been in there, right? So if he was there from the beginning, then they had already grabbed some human brain matter. He probably wasn't. So for a while there, I wonder if they were using any animal brain matter. Would that help? This is what I was thinking of when I saw the horse. Is like, how
What
did
about
they
this-
treat other animals?
What about the citizens that they wiped out? I'm
Yeah,
guessing
I
that
think
was
it's probably
a
where
big-
the
That's a lot of brain matter. Yeah.
was an
Yeah.
entire empire.
Yeah. So that makes me curious. Like, do they even need to be harvesting 86 at this point? Because they don't necessarily need one brain per bot. They said that there's copies made. These bots are cloning the brains.
Yeah, they did say that.
So all you really need is one. And it seems like they've got a great
They-
degree of variety.
they might deteriorate over time, which is why they might need fresh as they go along. But that's just my theory. They didn't really address that, which they might address that in the next season. But
I could see that if the brains that they construct are biological in nature, but if they're not, if they're silicon based or some kind of other technology fitting to this world, it would seem like they would last longer. But then there's also the scene where Shin reaches in with his gun inside of one of them and pulls the trigger, and that kills it. And like he knows where the brain of this thing is inside the tank. So it kind of makes me wonder if there is like a organic brain that they've constructed, a semi-organic replacement, and that could be dying. That could be something that they can't sustain.
like
But-
the brain jar in there he found and shot it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I love it. This is right up my alley.
I had thought we were getting something completely different. I had thought it was going to reveal that the group of people that make up the 86 and the group of people that make up the Alba had been at war with each other. The 86 actually were from the other country, and they had split, but took in some of the other people and made them fight. So the Alba were using 86 in their tanks, and then you were going to find out that the Alba were in the tanks for the 86 on the other side, and then they were going to reveal that and be like, oh, I guess I could go over there and have privilege.
Uh-huh.
By the way, then I would be like them. Which side should I fight on now? They're both morally wrong.
Yeah.
Who do I pick? I thought that's what we were gonna look at, but nope. Full AI, evil robot harvesting. Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yay!
I was calling that the Republic owned both sides, and they were just
Yeah.
using it as to exterminate the non-Alba. So
Yeah, I guess I'll say that the biggest twist to me was that it was what they said it was. Hey, these are just evil AI. Sure they are. Sure they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they are. Why do you think I'm lying to you?
I know your game.
Yep.
I've watched an anime before. All right, so they are given a new mission, and Shin's ready to go because he's heard his brother's voice. His goal is to find his brother, and I love his symbol on his juggernaut is a knight but with a shovel, where his brother's was a skeleton knight with a sword from their storytime book. His is the same thing but with a shovel, but the head's already gone because he's looking for his brother's head. He's supposed to be the Undertaker who's searching for a head. So yeah, they're going to be sent on this. Basically, your mission is to walk straight at the enemy until you're not alive anymore.
Yeah.
It's a recon mission to the enemy base. Yeah, they're basically there's 5 of them left. There's basically the characters I've already mentioned, and they're supposed to just go, and they're like, okay, we're gonna run into my brother Ray, and we'll have this battle, and they tell Lena not to call, like, hey, just get out of here.
You don't need to hear this.
Yeah. She goes and she tries to convince the general, and the general's like, nope. And he kind of confirms everything that she had been told is the truth. She found the secret orders of like, yeah, we just killed the 86. And the general reveals like, if we let them into society, what we did to them will become part of history, and we'll always be the villain. We have to hide what we did. We are doing a bad thing here.
Yeah.
We can't let that become part of public history. We have to wipe them from history.
Yeah, because if they die, it's as if they never existed.
Right. They can just write
Right.
them in the history books, and then and
History's written by the victor.
she goes to Annette and asks her for help, and then Annette gets really pissed off at her, and to the point where she's like, "I hate you. I don't ever want to see you again."
She reveals like everything about
Right.
the thing that she uses to communicate, and apparently they killed a lot of non-Alba to get this thing working because it just fried their brains till they died.
Right. So her story is next door. We had some 86 living that I used to play. There's an older brother and a little brother, and I used to play with the little brother, and we were really close friends until they became 86. The order came out that 86 would be moved off, and I got made fun of for knowing 86. So then I, called him a filthy pig, or whatever what she said, but basically. And then she also told her father, like, her father was going to take them in. And he was like, no, I don't want to. So he didn't. And then she reveals we had, from those kids' brain, they were psychic, and we built the para-raid communicator that you wear on your neck now, but we had to do a ton of human experimentation to do it and killed a ton of kids, and to the point where my father committed suicide, and I took up his work. And now you're being here all self-righteous, and I think you're just as bad as me, and I hate you for making me think about all this, and don't ever show up again.
Yeah, we're not friends anymore.
We're not friends anymore. She does tell Shin she knows he wants to kill his brother, and that's when he says stop calling. They have one last meal together, and then they disembark. They say goodbye to their mechanic guy.
He's like, make sure you don't run this thing into the ground. He's like, I can't promise that. He's like, can you just lie to me? I know this is your last mission.
And then we see Shin's brother, who I thought he had said, like, it's not really them in there, but this guy is like, I am going to get my brother and put his brain in a robot, and then me and my brother are going to be, like, best friends again.
He's thinking pretty clearly, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to read him books.
So then we come to the battle. which basically becomes Shin versus his brother while everyone else takes on another army of Legion.
Because as the shepherd, he has direct control of the Legion around him, and he tells all of them to get out because it's going to be a 1v1.
One does try to attack Shin, and he kills it.
Yeah.
So how much control he has, I'm not 100% sure. It seems like
it's more of a commander role than it is a direct control.
But yeah, so he's battling Shin, and he has liquid metal arms on his tank.
Yeah.
Liquid metal that can shapeshift, which is way higher technology than we've seen before. You can like grab missiles and throw them away or catch them so they don't damage his tank.
Blocked around.
Yeah, it went from Terminator 1 to Terminator 2 really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Shin shoots the armor, and the armor just deflects his round. So he's like, okay, I'm going to hit the exhaust port with my blade to expose it. And then he fires the round, and that's when the liquid arms catch the round, and it's like,
what?
And then it starts reaching for him, and he's like, ah.
This is creepy.
And the whole time he's talking to him psychically, he's like, Shin, I want to read you books.
Yeah. Lena calls in, and missiles start falling from the sky. She's turned on the mortars and is providing air support and is using visual link up to get confirmation. And they're like, you idiot, that's going to make you blind. She's like, not right away, though.
It's fine.
Yeah, I love this because for the first time, one of them actually got to see her in the reflection of her own monitor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. That was really, really cool.
They see that Shin's losing. He get his juggernaut gets damaged, so they rush over to help. And Lena comes up with a plan. So they start distracting Rey, and then mortars are falling on him and Shin. And he's like, "You're not gonna hurt my brother!" And he jumps up to take the mortar shells, but they're duds. Which then gives them a chance to revive Shin. Shin wakes up and he decides he's gonna fight. He goes in after his brother, and literally the liquid metal's coming into his juggernaut and to strangle him again. And he fires the gun, and his brother's like, "Oh, I don't need to take care of you. I get it now." And instead, the hand just like caresses his face and says goodbye. This scene, I got really emotional during the scene because every time we see Shin's memory of his brother, the eyes are all scratched off, all angry, like scratched out. And then that you see all those same memories over and over again as the eyes fade back in, and he realizes like, oh, my brother just went insane once, but he was still my kind, loving brother.
Like a guy. Yeah. It's just that moment. Ugh.
Yeah, he only murdered me once. I mean, bygones be bygones.
Yep.
No, actually, this was a touching moment, and his brother basically going, all right, it's time to rest now because you don't need me to protect you. You can do it yourself. And it was, even though he's just shooting a robot, just like that interaction was really, really touching.
How do you think this plays into the last part of episode 12? Because his brother's clearly there.
12 or 11?
11, sorry.
Is it a clone? Is it just his brain giving him something to feel good about? Is it gasping his last breath?
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll find out in season 2.
Guess so.
Shin starts crying, so they ask Lena to disconnect. And when she does, we see that Annette had actually helped her. And we see the scene where she confronts Annette again. And she's like, that little boy, was his name Shin? It's literally the guy I've been talking to this whole time. He's still alive. You could help him for the third time. You have a third time chance to help him, and you can finally do the right thing. And I love what they do. So they're standing it's raining outside, and she's standing in the rain, and Annette's under her porch. And Lena takes a step back, and Annette takes a step out to meet her, pulling her into the rain, symbolically showing that you're into the mess now. You're you're in the wetness now with me.
Yep.
Perfectly done. I was like, okay, that's good visualization storytelling right there.
Yeah, because Lena didn't know how to get into the mortars, but her technical R&D friend could hack the mortar control system. And come to find out, half the rounds were duds anyways. Because on her screen it says 49% actually exploded. And the 86 are like, why did you fire a round at him? You could have killed everyone. She's like, nah, I knew it wasn't dead.
But she got, they actually, and they set that up with the general when she had talked to him. He had said, we don't even know what those work. So
Yeah, and who's gonna reload them? Like he's like, no, someone's got to man them, and we don't have it.
after Shin recovers, they do call back and they thank her for her help, and then they are off on to their recon mission into.
Did you mention how she was like listening when he was breaking down and sobbing, and they were like, "You need to get out of here."
Yeah, I said he was crying, so she hangs up.
Oh, okay.
That's what I meant. Yeah, they specifically asked like
it was like wailing and sobbing. Like you don't hear that from Shin. That was crazy. Yeah.
Just that relief, but also sadness. Oh man, such good storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the end theme played during the battle. Which
the score is so good.
Dope.
Yep.
Anyway, so they're leaving to pass the communication limit and into parts unknown, and she realizes like, oh no, they're like gonna be gone. I'm never gonna see or hear from them ever again. And she just sprints out of the building.
Trying to stay in range.
Yeah. She's just running down the street. I think one of her heels breaks and everything. Like, man. And you felt this too because you know that it was futile. There's zero chance that she could keep up with their speed.
And that seems to be her story through this whole thing. Like, as much as she seems to buck the system or try her hardest to be helpful or to make something go her way, everything is so futile for her. Mm-hmm. And so in this last episode, which we'll get to, I like how triumphantly she is like fighting the system. Like I said, really looking forward to season 2.
Yeah.
And then they leave.
And they're gone.
So our next 2 episodes mostly focus on them traveling the countryside. They come to a river they can't cross, and they're like, I guess we could just stay here for a while. Like, we don't have to. We're not in a rush. So they visit a town, and then we come to the scene that we're getting close to it. They see the tunnel, and Shin looks down it, and he's like, "It's fine. They're not going to run into us. We're not going to run into them. We're not in any danger." They take baths that night because they find a boiler and manage to heat up water. And while Shin is sleeping, the rest are talking about how much he's changed since the fight with his brother. He seems at peace, but he also seems kind of aimless, like we've mentioned, and especially Raiden is concerned. And then in the morning, Shin's gone, and they're like, "Well, he didn't take his juggernaut. Where did he go?" And they show the tunnel, and they show them talking, and they say, hey, "Could he have gone there?" And then it shows everyone at a zoo. Now, guys, I'm almost sure through that tunnel was the zoo.
I can see that.
Yeah.
It just looked really dark at the end of that tunnel, is all I'm saying.
Right, but I think the issue was that in the previous scene where the guy was saying, don't go down that tunnel, because Shin's like, it's all right, they're not going to encounter us. And then Shin turns and he does start to go down that tunnel.
Right.
And they don't know it's the zoo at this point. It's just a scary dark tunnel with danger.
But he did know it was so when they get there, it's a Legion tank that is a former 86 that is disabled and wants to be put out of its misery. Mm-hmm. He knew that then.
Yeah.
That's why he meant we're not in danger from it. And so he was going to just go take care of that, and they ended up following him to that point.
Yeah, he wasn't going to the zoo to visit the dead animals. He was...
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. But that's the thing, is that the question was whether they knew that there was something in there that wasn't a threat to them, or whether they thought there was something in there that was a threat to them. Not Shin, them.
Oh, them.
I thought the question was whether they went in the tunnel to find him.
No, because this was whether or not it looked like Shin was throwing himself at danger. And it did look like he was throwing himself at danger. But another question I have is, he said that thing had been following them for a long time. Yeah. So if it was disabled, how could it have been following them?
Well, you said it couldn't move.
Which was weird, because he said it couldn't move, and then it did that.
Well, I think it made it as far as it could, and then it finally broke down to where it can't move anymore. That's what I think.
I think you could inch along, but it just couldn't drive. Like
Doesn't
when your car
seem
loses
that
its transmission, but you can still go in first gear.
maybe. I guess what I'm thinking of is like it just made me wonder if he actually was the one that damaged it with his rifle or whatever. And I don't know if the rifle's even capable of doing any damage to them, but it just crossed my mind because I don't know. It just seems like why would that thing have been following them and not? You guys have already said it. It just doesn't work in my head.
After the credits, we get this really touching video from Fido. We barely touched on Fido, the robot. And they haven't really touched on Fido, but he's basically this robot that follows them around and carries their ammunition and
Has a
trailers.
kooky personality.
Yeah. We see like all the video he's taken through his whole life, from when he met Shin to joining Spearhead, and then all these like behind the scenes scenes. Like we see Anju breaking down and crying after Daya's death. We see Kurena keep coming up to him and telling him like, Shin touched my arm today and Shin paid me a compliment today. And then the final scene is him dying. And this is Fido's death. And then the next episode starts with the battle that they get caught in, and Fido sacrifices himself to save Shin because everyone else's Juggernauts is disabled. Shin's is the only one left, and
Takes a round for him.
Fido takes a round for him, and they try to repair him, and he ends up carving out part of Fido to put his name in it, put it in the box, and then leaving the box with Fido. And then they hook up one of the trailers to Shin's Juggernaut. They take turns driving it. They're almost out of gas, almost out of food, almost out of ammo. They hide in a cave at one point to miss a group of Legion. They reach another town, and there's a school there, and they spend the night there, and they play school for Kurena, who never got to go to school, so she can experience it a little bit.
And they make the agreement that they're going to take shifts driving the Juggernaut, and that if they come across an enemy, whoever's driving at the time has to fight, and the others are to hide.
Which this is so obvious. I was like, no one caught on to this. So they go on the next day, last tank of gas they have. They reach a cliff. They start going along the cliff wall, and suddenly Shin's like, "I'll take my shift now." And they're like, "It's not till after lunch." He's like, "No, I'll just take it now. It's not a big deal. I'm bored." And everyone laughs. Oh, he's bored. He's gonna get in. And then he gets in. And he like cuts the cable to the trailer, causes a rock slide to block him in. He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go fight. Whoever's driving has to fight." And they're all like, "Oh, he tricked us." And I'm like, "Yeah, that was
yeah, stealthy."
Uh-huh. So I got a question. He left the box of names in front of Fido. Was that symbolic of him saying, "This is it, I'm dead"? Like that's the moment when Fido died. He knew they could no longer carry their supplies with them. They were down to one Juggernaut. There is no way we're surviving this. Whereas before I held on to hope, because he was supposed to carry that to wherever he was going to go.
Right. Yeah.
So this is where he went. This is it.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Air quotes.
And I think that's what Raiden keeps hinting at whenever they have conversations. He was like, "Are you planning on going to the other side of the river alone?"
Yeah.
And I don't think he meant as in geographically. I think
Yeah.
Right.
Like, are you purposely knowing you're gonna die and try to not let us go there with you? Which becomes a big theme of this final battle. While he's off fighting, they're grabbing their rifles and go over the rock slide and join the battle anyway. And as he's dying in his Juggernaut, he hears them fighting, also dying. He's like, "You idiots!" In an affectionate way, more than I just said. And then you just see he can't reach. He can't reach. He's trying to get to his pistol and he can't reach for it.
Why couldn't he reach it? It looked to me like he could.
I thought for sure he was. Yeah, maybe that was it.
It looked like a conscious decision not to kill himself, which was really weird.
He hears the voice about the princess, the one you had mentioned, and then he goes, "I wonder who I'll call out for when I'm in the Legion."
Part of the Legion.
I'm wondering if he thought, what if I become part of the Legion? Can I do something about it? I'm wondering if he's going to like defect as part of the Legion, but we'll see.
That would be interesting.
Then we jump back to Lena, who visits Spearhead's base. She talks with Aldrich, who reveals that he's actually an Alba who's been dyeing his hair because his wife and daughter were 86, but then they died in combat, so he's been here waiting to die so that he can join them. And like he literally tells every unit of Spearhead, like, I'm actually an Alba, do you want to kill me? And they're like, no, we're fine with it. And he's like, God dang it.
Right before they leave on their final recon mission.
Right.
He's like, come on,
Please.
She walks around and then she finds Shin's book, and then it is the picture of her as a pig with a bunch of notes, a picture of their entire group with names written on it for her.
I love how the notes always start off with, hey, if you found this, you really are an idiot. I can't believe you actually came out here.
Yep.
And she takes care of the cat, and she vows to keep on fighting. And then we get a scene of Shin seeing his brother and taking his hand, and then his head comes off.
Yep.
And that's the end. Again, we're not doing episode 12. It's just a recap episode, but if you watch the last 5 seconds of that, you see a new Legion tank waking up. There, with heavy implications of who that could be.
Weird.
And that's where we're leaving off. Any thoughts on this ending before we head into the part 2?
I did not see this coming. If I'm thinking normal anime tropes or how the story was being told, I was wondering if these 5 were gonna like, just because they talked about going to a different nation beyond the borders of Legion territory. I was kind of thinking, are they gonna go the happy ending route? I did not see, no, we're just going to slaughter them all coming.
Yeah.
Because they set it up so well to, hey, we're going through the countryside and hiding from the Legion. Like, they know, like, he can hear the Legion coming. He knows where they're at. Dodging them is no problem for him. So, yeah, this was a sad ending, but man, does it make me just ready to watch season 2.
Yeah. I love that they did this. I think it gives Lena a lot more room to be an interesting character. She has been interesting so far, but now we can see, like, is she going to, during this almost a year, it's got to be more than half or 3/4 of a year, during this time that she's been with them, what has she learned from their tactics? How would she handle another crew? Because we were introduced to the idea that another crew is being prepared to be Spearhead. Their mechs are all ready to go. Everything's set. We're just waiting for these other ones to die. So what's going to happen there? Is she going to be piloting them? Is it going to be them going up against Shin? And so she's going to have to be predicting Shin's technique and his tactics on the battlefield, knowing how to fight him. Or is there going to be some recognition of that one moves like Shin? You know, I bet that's him. That shepherd is him. You know, we got to do this or that or the other. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays into it. And I'm really curious if we do get to meet this new set of 86s, I'm really curious about who they are and how they're going to make them interesting characters, because how can they live up to Shin and his team, right? With his special abilities and everything too. So
I think what I want to point out is we bring this up so many times on so many different anime of like, yeah, you didn't kill a character when you should have, and so you remove the stakes, and this anime kills everybody, and there's not a ton that happens. There's a few battles, there's a lot of heart-to-heart scenes in this, but because the stakes are so heavy and so real for every one of these characters, nobody is safe. I don't feel like Lena is safe. She could be dead at the beginning of the next episode. I don't know. They just killed 99% of the cast without blinking an eye. Not only do they kill the main character, they then, right after, say, next season 2's coming. Like, the cojones on that. But the weight of those stakes does so much for this show. That we haven't touched on before, and because we harp on it so many times to the point where we seem morbid, like, hey, we want death. But when we say that, this is why it gives such an impact to the story and every decision made. When Shin chooses to take the Juggernaut by himself, and then his friends choose to go after him, that isn't just like, well, they're gonna be fine. It's not that kind of anime. No, I don't know what they're fine, and I'm sitting at the edge of my seat because of it.
Yeah, there's consequences.
Exactly. And there were very few 86 that when their deaths happened, you didn't feel it. And it was just an emotional roller coaster the entire way. And the way they told this story was just phenomenal. And like, another thing we harp on is character development and the slow burn character development. And they mastered both of those in this. I cared about nearly every single character in this story. So just bravo.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with that, let's go to final reviews. Jason, what do you think you're going to give this?
I've been flip-flop. No, I'm just kidding. 5. Yeah. Animations, beautiful. The CGI integration was next to none. I was super impressed. Where you've got, both the anime animation and CGI animation. Usually that makes for a wonky visual, and I didn't feel that at all in this one. The character development, fantastic. The storytelling, the story beats were great. The stakes were high, and the consequences were grave. Yeah, this is just a fantastic anime.
Yeah, all of that. It definitely makes me want to come back for more. I want to see what's going to happen with these characters. I want to see who else they're going to introduce. Absolutely love it. Very, very good. 5.
I don't feel like it should be a 5, but I have nothing bad to say about it. I guess if I have any complaint, it's that the mechs aren't as cool. They look like ants fighting spiders, and they didn't really do it for me. But they also had a real world, like, this is what's practical, so they didn't have to be cool. So I don't really hold that against it. I guess it, but you know what? I'm gonna give it a score of 86.
Oh,
No, 5 for me.
I was going to say, I'm going to have to implement some new metrics on the website.
All right.
And the music was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's what will be done for today. But we are watching the next half to episode 23, if that's the final episode. That is what we'll be talking about in our next podcast. So if you have thoughts or feelings about this half, and don't spoil us on the second half, please. But if you have thoughts, we would love to discuss them with you. Please share that on our Twitter at Baka Podcast or our website, theanimebakaclub.com. There's a contact us link there. Or you can leave it wherever you found the podcast and it'll get back to us, YouTube comment, whatever you need to do. We would love to hear your thoughts on the anime that we're watching as well. Otherwise, I guess we will see you when we come back to finish part 2.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Sayonara.